4:06 on a Thursday. It's the Joel Natale Show. We are live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio at 5th and State, having the crucial conversations that Erie needs. And we want to welcome to our microphones Dr. Dawn Joy. She is the Executive Director of Catholic Charities, Counseling and Adoption Services. Dr. Joy, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All righty, we're a family show. We like to hear origin stories. How did you come up and how did you get to Erie and this position that you're in?
So I am not originally from Erie. I came to Erie, however, because I was drawn by the strong reputation of the School of Nursing at Villa Maria College. I'm originally from the New York City area, so I can talk funny if you'd like.
Did you come as an undergrad?
I did.
Wow.
Yes. And thought when I graduate, I'm getting out of Erie, and I never quite left. So
love that.
Continued that, and continued in my nursing career and leadership, and still here. So I just, for many years, was involved as faculty and then higher administration positions at Gannon, was the associate dean for the School of Nursing there, and then left there in 22 after 13 or so years. Yeah. And I also have an organizational development company, so I was happy to reconnect with that. That is what my doctoral studies are in. And the search committee for this particular position reached out to me through LinkedIn or something like that. And I'm always up for an adventure. So I thought I'll go for the interview and see what it's like. And they just, as the movie says, they sucked me in. So, I actually am celebrating 2 years today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really cool. What was your specialty as a nurse?
I started out in OB.
Did you?
Yeah. And then I did a lot of community health nursing. And then I,
Did you birth a lot of babies?
Yeah, I birthed a lot of babies. Yeah. And then I was really drawn to teaching, so I taught for many years, even before I taught at Villa Maria College. I'm that old. And then taught at Gannon. I've taught at Penn State Barron. I've taught at Edinburgh in a variety of different clinical specialties. Always. And then got a graduate degree, so pursued leadership roles and worked at Hammett for 11 or 12 years. Wow. And had successive leadership positions there, doing some non-clinical stuff. I was the token nurse in the planning department because I could speak nurse language, I guess. So that was exciting, and I cherish my days at Hammett as well. We've
really benefited from this 18-year-old undergrad who came to Villa.
Actually, I was 17.
Oh, my gosh.
My birthday is in December, so I was a very young freshman.
So what a blessing to have you here.
Thank you.
My gosh. All right, so let's talk about the origin story of Catholic Charities, Counseling and Adoption Services, because we need to be clear here. There's like a kind of a greater umbrella organization of which you're an affiliate of.
Great.
So.
And this is one of my favorite stories to tell, the history of Catholic Charities, Counseling and Adoption, which it wasn't called then. Back in the day, actually on Christmas Eve in 1953, Catholic Social Services was born. It was founded by two sisters of St. Joseph, Sister Marie Baptiste and Sister Kathleen, and their mission was to offer social services of a professional nature to the residents of the Diocese of Erie. They went off and got their MSWs and came back. And then opened the doors at what we in Erie know as St. Joseph's Home, 1926 West 6th Street. And that's where our office was until 1970. Okay. They continued the work, beginning under the Diocesan Department of Charities, with not any really formal programs. But what they did was they worked with people that were having troubles in life. They worked with people that wanted to adopt children. And they also distributed food vouchers. So those are three things that we still do to this day. Under the guidance of Sister Marie, the agency that was just sort of doing these great things actually became an accredited social service agency licensed by the Department of State Public Welfare of the state of Pennsylvania. And they formed an advisory board, and it became a full-service agency, funded a lot by United Way and as well as the diocese and generous donations. I think Sister Marie Baptiste, my understanding is she went on to become the General Superior of the Sisters of St. Joseph. But then then it became official that we were called Catholic Social Services of the Diocese of Erie in 1967. And the primary objective was to help families with their problems in the areas of marital relationships, parent-child relationships, personality issues. They also provided services to unmarried parents, people that either perhaps did not want to have a family, people that did want to have a family, and they also continued to give emergency financial assistance with the approval of the pastor, which again is still something we do today. I just wrote out a check for $300 so that someone who is living in her car with her 4-year-old child can put some money down on an apartment.
Wow. What's for that kind of work, for the behavioral health issues and for the, the kind of the basic charity, basic needs, how's the money flow that way? I mean, is that all donations? Is that
no?
Okay.
So, in terms of, if I can digress a little bit, the services we offer today are mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling, which includes gambling addiction. That's a new certification that our counselors just received, and then those three. And then we also have a tobacco cessation program. Those are funded either through private insurance, Medicaid, and again, back to our mission, we never turn anyone away if they can't afford. So we, I believe, are the only licensed mental health agency in Erie County that will basically provide charity care.
Wow.
We will work with people. We will do a sliding scale. But if you absolutely have no resource, and we will help you. And like people come to us and they don't know about Medicaid or they don't know how to get on Medicaid, we'll help them. But that's the source of funding for mental health, which is not, bountiful by any means. Yes. And then I'll skip forward a little bit. The source of resources for our adoption work, we subcontract with Bethesda.
Okay.
And that's a contract with the statewide adoption network. So the state pays Bethesda, Bethesda pays us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's exciting. And during COVID, there was a lot of money that was flowing through, right, for behavioral health and so on, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people needed those services. Mm-hmm. All righty, so so this history of a counseling and adoption services available to folks and those basic needs here. Talk about how you work with the Catholic parishes and your relationship to the overall diocese. How does that all work?
Right. So I just want to kind of finish up the history.
Sorry.
That's okay, because it gets into one of the other things we're going to talk about, which is refugee resettlement.
Yeah, sure.
So 1970 came along, and the kind of complexion of adoption had changed. No more were there little babies left at the hospital steps. And so the need to have a full building orphanage was no longer a need, which is a good thing. And at that point, then, our agency moved from St. Joseph's Home to where we presently are located at 329 West 10th Street. That's the main office. We have physical offices in Bradford and DuBois and Sharon currently. Mm-hmm. So we covered the 13 counties of the diocese, providing different services. For example, in Bradford, we're providing adoption and permanency services. In DuBois, we do the same. In Sharon, we had kind of a myriad of different services that are a little dormant right now. And in Erie, we provide all of the services: mental health counseling, adoption and permanency services, and refugee resettlement. Prior to COVID, we had counseling in all of the offices, but COVID, of course, dramatically changed, how we all conducted ourselves, and there really was no need for physical going into the office kind of thing. And then we also developed additional technology with a electronic health record that allows us to do telehealth.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then in 1970, the agency moved to our present location, and it was at that time, between starting in 1975 actually, that 163 Vietnamese orphans were placed by our agency in some manner, and over 300 South Asian refugees were assisted by Catholic Social Services, and by 1980. we became a contractually obligated or contractually related to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB. They are one of 10 refugee resettlement service agencies in the United States.
So the actual bishops' conference is a resettlement agency.
That is one of the main
10,
things it does. It does many other services,
Sure.
but that's who we provide services for, and they in turn get their money from the federal government.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But I think it's interesting
Yeah.
for people to know that we've been doing this since 1980,
Right.
and it actually came out of our doing international adoptions. In fact, we had a staff member whose brother was one of the first international adoptions. He was adopted from Korea, and our present director of adoption was actually involved in that. So,
Wow.
so we have nice stories to tell.
Have there over the years been kind of especially when you talk about adoptions and so on, international adoptions, have there been like these kind of cohorts that have come? You mentioned Vietnamese, you mentioned Korean. Are there different moments in time where different people are coming to be resettled?
I don't know that I can answer that historically, but I can answer from my knowledge gained in the last 2 years in this role and also what staff have told me. And yes, it does seem like at times, like for example, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we had a lot of Ukrainian refugees because of what was going on in the country. And that has dwindled off, again, because of the war. I think they're fleeing to other countries and not coming to Erie. Okay. And this brings up an important, or not coming to the United States, this brings up an important part that I want to make, and that is that our refugees have sought legal asylum, which is a long and very difficult process. So in other words, they seek legal assignment because of persecution, because of fear of safety, for a variety of very specific and have to be documented needs as to why they are seeking legal asylum to be in the United States. So that's a process that starts way before we get them. And then depending on what resettlement agency they work with, say they're coming through USCCB, then USCCB or whoever the resettlement agency is will look to see if there is what they call a U.S. tie. So this has happened with a number of our current employees. We have several people who had a brother living here from Iraq, and so they sought legal asylum to come, and because there was a U.S. tie, then they were funneled, if you would, or shifted to Erie. So I think that's a very important distinction to make because, unfortunately, the public doesn't understand the difference when you use the term refugee or use the term immigrant. It's a sort of a general term.
Yeah, and there's definite distinctive cohorts and distinctive categories of folks that are coming from overseas into the United States. Let's take our first break. It's 4:19. Dr. Dawn Joy of Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services is with us here on the Joel Natale Show. Stay with us. 421, it's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Dr. Dawn Joy is with us here. We're talking about Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services and their refugee resettlement services here. Dr. Dawn, you wanted to talk about kind of the umbrella of all of your work here. Can you expand on that a bit? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption is one of 7 affiliates that basically are supported and report up to another organization in the diocese that is named Catholic Charities Incorporated. Mm-hmm. We have, unfortunately, always had a little name confusion, but for example, another such affiliate that everyone knows in Erie is St. Martin's Center.
Sure.
So St. Martin's Center, Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption. There's a nursing home in DuBois. There's Prince of Peace Center in Sharon. There's a men's shelter in Clearfield. All of these affiliates live to serve out the mission of the diocese through the various ministries that they offer.
Yeah, St. Martin Center has a different mission than what
Absolutely.
you guys have.
Yes, right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're involved in this adoption, you're involved in mental health, and you're involved in refugee resettlement here. Maybe be specific about, like, if someone came to their pastor at at St. Luke's Church or whatever, what kinds of things would be referred to your work?
So in terms of it could be. Probably, most likely, it's going to fall in the area of emergency financial assistance.
Okay.
So we are constantly seeking grants to fund that organization because, as you can imagine, or that resource, there's not insurance for that, right? So again, this morning, I just wrote out a check to help someone get out of living in her car. We do get calls directly from the pastors about their, people that are within their church, but mostly we get calls directly from people who heard, hey, maybe Catholic Charities will help you. Also, we work closely with Catholic Charities Incorporated because many people will just call the diocese and say, can you help me? Mm-hmm. And so they are not directly involved in distributing or giving the money or vetting the process.
Right.
And we have a pretty sophisticated process. Rarely do I feel that someone is taking advantage of a situation, and I'm always going to err on the side of
an open hand.
An open hand, right?
Yeah.
But we also want to. All of Catholic Charities is about sustainability, whether it's in mental health or substance abuse, refugee resettlement, adoption. It's all about sustainability. So my conversation again with this woman was, well, tell me what's going on in your life, and what are your plans? Do you have a job? And so basically she talked to me about kind of getting out of living in the car. She has an apartment, but she doesn't have enough money for the first month's rent and all of that. We have a limit of how much we will give, and it is a one-time offer of assistance, and that is only because so I can spread the money out further. Yeah. Because if I if I completely took care of her today, we probably have very little left. And so where do we get that money from? Grants.
Okay.
Catholic Charities Incorporated has a very rich and vibrant grant opportunity that we always apply for, but we apply for many others as well, just to keep that mission going.
Talk about if someone is, feeling like they need some help, maybe could use maybe some group therapy or maybe one-on-one counseling. What's that workflow look like?
So, sometimes we do get calls from people that just, are kind of going sideways in life or beside themselves. And then that, one of our licensed mental health counselors does an intake or talks to them on the phone to see, what are their particular needs. And then they are kind of slotted in depending on, the sort of subcategory of mental health help that they need. We have a very active substance abuse counseling program. And recently, another thing that we're very proud about is we received a grant from the Erie County Drug and Alcohol entity and their money came from the opioid settlement funds
Right.
nationally.
Yeah.
But our grant is to provide substance abuse education, not counseling, but education. So it's called harm reduction.
Right.
And we're providing that for Cathedral Prep and Mother Teresa Academy because they didn't really have those resources. And so 2 of our counselors go over once a week and they have classes with these kids to, talk to them about, how can we prevent this from happening. So we're not only on the therapeutic side, but we're also on the prevention side, which I guess the new term is harm reduction.
That's tremendous.
We're very excited about that.
Yeah. Do you get referrals from either primary care or
Yes.
Other? I mean, again, trying to get a social worker, especially in this day and age where it's tough to get in front of a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I mean, you'll wait 6 months sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I'm married to one. I know. I don't have to wait 6 months.
Right.
And he's probably listening and dying as we speak. But no, we've had people walk in. We've had people call. Our website is very, active and interactive in terms of our services. So you can actually click a button and someone will reach out to you in terms of what your needs are. We've had other caseworkers call and make referrals, and certainly Erie County Drug and Alcohol makes their own referrals. Parole and probation make referrals. People are sometimes mandated to receive care from us. So that stream of services comes to us from a variety of different places and just word of mouth.
Wow. It's great to know that you're there. I mean, again, you've been doing this work
we're there,
since the 1950s.
But sometimes people forget we're there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's I hate when they say it's a best kept secret. Well, we'll get the word out a little bit here. Do you find that in our current moment that the demand for behavioral health is growing?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I was not in this work during COVID. I was actually at Gannon, and I'm not sure what was worse, what we're going through now with our the executive orders and the impact that that's having, or going through COVID and trying to run a nursing program. It's a day-to-day, decision for me. But COVID definitely did have an impact on people's mental health. I think we're still coming out of that. I don't know that we ever will. And certainly, substance abuse is a large problem that I think people, don't want to, don't think of Erie as having a large problem, but unfortunately we do. We're also seeing an uptick in, all the little corner stores that have the little ticket machines,
the skill game
things. Skill games, yes. That is causing people to spend their money on that as opposed to the rent and the food.
Oh, Lord.
And then that's causing, other insecurities, other financial insecurities. So that's why we're very happy to have the gambling addiction services now as well, just to kind of, again, maybe there's something we can do in terms of education to have people realize that's a slippery slope. That's not going to the casino, but it could be just as devastating.
Dr. Dawn Joy is with us from Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services. When we come back, we'll talk about refugee resettlement services and the current challenges that they're facing over at Catholic Charities. Stay with us. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show. Appreciate you listening here on Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio at 5th and State. It is 4:34, and we're having a conversation with Dr. Dawn Joy. She's the executive director with Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services. And I really want to kind of zoom in on our final minutes here. We've got about 17 minutes or so, Dr. Joy, to talk about let's do a comprehensive look at your refugee resettlement services, the programs that you offer, who you're serving, what are some of the stories, the anecdotes that you can tell, and then this moment that we're in nationally with the current executive orders that are coming out of the White House and so on, and how I think it's key that we understand how it's impacting Erie, Pennsylvania people. So why don't you start with, again, this refugee work has started, 1980?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
For us, it started in the 1980s. I'm sure it's been going on in the United States for a lot longer time than
right.
that. And so...
it's channeled through the bishops?
It's channeled through the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, yes.
Okay.
And there are 9 other resettlement agencies in the United States. USCCB happens to be the one that we work with. It is one of the largest, if not the largest resettlement agency. And I apologize, I don't know the names of the others.
That's fine. And can you define terms? What is a refugee?
So yeah, it's interesting that that's someone, if you look at the literal translation, that's seeking refuge,
yeah.
right? They're seeking a safe place to be. It goes back to my conversation earlier about the people that we are providing services for have gone through an extensive process because they are being persecuted, because they are not feeling safe, to seek legal asylum in this country. And that is the only way that we are receiving them, and the only way that they can come through any refugee service.
So they're making application while they're still in their country of origin. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and that can take years.
Okay. So again, there's a paperwork, there's a paper trail, and it's being, once they get on this side of the border, it's being facilitated through the bishops and to your agency.
That's correct.
All right.
Some of our folks have come from refugee camps in their country where they have been collected and kept in, prisoner is not the right word, but
in a congregate situation.
In a congregate setting for years.
Wow.
For years.
Yeah.
And so this is, because it takes just so long to come into the country. So our agency, in terms of that particular department, has really grown specifically in the past 3 years. And a lot of that is due to the prior president's support and mandate, if you would, to allow up to, I believe it was 125,000 refugees could come into the United States, seeking legal asylum, up to 125,000
per year
for the year. Yes.
Okay.
And so that's what I believe it was last year. So say 23, 24.
Okay.
Now, we knew and understood that with the change of the presidency, there would be changes, as there were in 2016. I wasn't with the agency then, but it pretty much, everyone had to be laid off. At that point, though, the volume that we were taking care of was much smaller. It was at least a quarter of the size. We had maybe 9 employees. They all either found other jobs or were laid off. And so, and then slowly through changes, the process kind of started up again. And then, as I said, in the last, I would say, 2 years particularly, but 3 years, that volume really, really increased. Now we knew.
Now, was it all from, Washington policy, but or did it also change with some of the things that were happening in the global space? I mean, when you think about it,
yes.
The U.S. military pulls out of Afghanistan.
Correct.
And then immediately you have a surge of Afghani refugees, especially those that helped American military members.
They're called SIV, Special Interest Visas. And that's another level of legal ability to be in the United States.
And do you guys deal with that kind
Absolutely,
of category?
yes.
Okay.
And so you may well know that recently, in the last year, in fact, one of our former employees, Saeed Taraki, who works for the mayor,
Right.
Founded the Afghan Community Center up on Peach Street. And that was due to the large influx of Afghani folks that we did take in during that time period. Before that, I wasn't with the organization, so I'm not sure if it was before or even at the same time. Obviously, we had a large influx of people from Ukraine seeking shelter, basically, because of the war going on there.
Being
So yes, we do definitely
kicked out of their space because it became.
We do
wartime.
definitely see waves from certain geographic areas for sure.
So when you talk about your program types under the refugee resettlement, what does that mean?
So that's an excellent question. So currently we have 6 different programs, but the 2 that are the major ones that I want to talk about, the first 90 days is called reception and placement. We pick up these people at the airport. We have already established for them an apartment that's fully furnished with food in the refrigerator, and we have a hot meal for them, and case management starts that day. Basically, it's the case manager picking them up at the airport. And that is a program that lasts only 90 days. And the point of that is to get them established here, get Social Security cards, get them connected with the different agencies that they need to, food assistance and such. But we're still supporting them for 90 days, reception and placement. And so, and I want to come back to reception placement because that is the one that's been most impacted. The whole goal of our program is self-sustainability, is to bring people here, to have them be contributing members of the Erie community. And I have many examples to share with you of that actually happening. The program that can fall, some people become self-sustainable after 90 days. And to get the kids in school and get the kids the immunizations and get the health care they need, all of that is very busy time in the first 90 days. After that, there's another program called Match Grant, which basically is funded for every $2 that we're given, we have to contribute $1 in either volunteer time or donations, whether they be monetary or furniture or people's time. And that can go on for 240 days. And again, that's to, some people take a little bit longer to get into that self-sustainability mode, to get jobs, to become settled. Some of our families are 11 and 12 and 13 people,
wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of a lot to manage. But going back to the reception and placement program, this is the one that on January 24th, an executive order came out that specifically earmarked the State Department, the foreign aid part of the State Department, and trickle-down effect of that was that it impacted the part of the government that is PRM, Population Refugee Management. Population Refugee Management is the funding source that comes to USCCB that then comes to us. So on January 24th, that was turned off. Prior to that, right after the inauguration, anyone that had been in the process of seeking legal asylum, literally some people were on planes, were turned back immediately after the inauguration. But we were still, we had a whole bunch of people that came in December because people could see that there might be a shift.
There might be a change, yeah.
A shift here. A normal month for us is 25 to 30 people coming in a month. We had 93.
Wow.
So we're still in the first 90 days for many of those people. Actually, 111 people are still in that first 90 days. But we have not been paid. And unfortunately, there were some bills before that. And how the system works is it's a reimbursement system. The folks come in, we pay their rent, we get their food, we get whatever they need to get those jobs. We spend the money, and then we submit the bills to USCCB, and they pay us back. In the meantime, we're making payroll, we're doing all of these things.
Sure.
So we have not been paid since early December, and prior to that, there had been a glitch where there were some older bills dating back to May that are also now being held up from this executive order on January 24th. So to really, I'm going to tell you a shocking figure. We currently, in that program alone, have $300,000 in unpaid invoices.
Wow.
And if you're going to ask me, do I worry about making payroll this week? I sure did.
Wow.
And only because of the strength of our board and their wisdom and their financial guidance and some things that we had to, really move around, that we don't really have much to move around. We're not a big organization. We're not a multi-million-dollar organization. We made payroll this week. I don't know if we'll make payroll next time.
I'm confused on why, folks that were in process, well before the inauguration, before these executive orders, are not being handled, under contract, basically.
Well, that is an excellent point, and that is the point we are making. In that we're saying, so USCCB had been told by the federal government that their budget for federal fiscal year, because they're on a federal fiscal year, so that would have started October 1, their budget for federal fiscal year 25 was approved for the whole year. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, we can ratchet down, but we should be good till September 30th.
Sure.
And that's what USCCB was working under, that assumption. But no, it turns out that that's not being honored. And that's kind of our angst, is that we have spent all this money. We have honored our obligations. I am not going to stop providing services for this 111 people.
Right. I mean, they're here. They were here before January 20th.
They need employment help. They need assistance to get to meds for their health care. They need all of this work. And so we have, unfortunately, started laying off people, moving people into other areas of the organization where, the impact is not as strong. But it's going to be fairly dramatic. Now, as of February 18th, we did hear that USCCB has filed a lawsuit against the United States government for this on the very premise that contract is broken here.
You're right.
You promised us, or, we were told that the money was approved, and we're just trying to draw down on the money, and we're not getting the money.
Yeah. I mean, again, even if you said, okay, that January 20th was some kind of
I could have lived with that
date.
Yes.
But you've got to, for the people that are on the ground here expecting these services, you've got to be able to reimburse.
And if you actually dig into the executive order, which you can, I mean, it's a matter of public record,
right,
it does say that essential services should be continued.
So what's the holdup?
The holdup is, go ahead and provide the essential services, but we're not going to pay you. So that's the catch. I don't know if it's a catch-22 or what it is, but that's the situation.
So on the ground in Erie, and again, these are arrivals before January 20th. How many people are in this 90-day window?
111.
111
right now, and then as their 90 days expires, they kind of trickle out of that program.
Right.
Now, the secondary problem with this is So we knew that this came out on January 24th, and we knew it affected the reception and placement program, because that program ultimately gets their funding source from the State Department, and that's USAID and all the other stuff that's going on that you see being written about. We were hopeful because the other programs, of which there are 5 other programs, are funded through ORR, which is funded through Department of Health and Human Services. So we thought, okay, we will do what we can, thinking that we would at least be paid for the services we rendered. We won't take any more people in, and then we'll just kind of shift our organizational model to this other side. But now that those bills are not being paid, and that's really
what's being said about that?
Nothing. USCCB. I just had a Teams meeting with our contact with USCCB, and they are just blindsided. They don't know what to make of it.
And do you think about this? This is the Diocese of Erie, certainly not the largest Catholic Charities organization in Pennsylvania even, let alone across the United States. And so your sister agencies and other affiliates across the country are facing this same dilemma.
Yeah. But an interesting fact that, so Erin Tubbs is the executive director of Catholic Charities Incorporated, and she reached out to, through the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, and determined there is only one other Catholic Charities agency in the state of Pennsylvania that provides refugee services, and that's in Philadelphia. So she was thinking immediately, well, Philadelphia's got to be bigger. No, we're the biggest one in Pennsylvania.
You're the biggest one.
Their part of their business that deals with refugee services is much, much smaller than us. Not that that makes the story better, but I was
No, but
surprised
that's-
because
yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. My gosh, if we're suffering, someone like Philadelphia must be really, or Pittsburgh or whatever.
So what's your strategy here? What do you
We are
do?
borrowing, and stealing money. Well, we're not stealing. We're delete.
Right, delete, yeah.
No, we are.
Yeah.
We had a fundraising event on Saturday. We have had sent letters out to our donors that, I understand that not everyone shares the views that we do in terms of the work that we do, but basically, if the ship goes down, the whole agency goes down.
Have you had any conversations with federal legislators, with Mike Kelly?
Me personally have not, but
Senator
the Pennsylvania
Fetterman,
Catholic College
Senator
Conference is advocating on our behalf. But I believe that the board will take those next steps.
Because that's where, it could be worked out even on the staff level between, let's say McCormick staff or Fetterman staff or Kelly staff and staffers at the State Department to say, okay, you can't, it's one thing of people that are maybe in the pipeline but still living in their country of origin. Yet the people that are on the ground in Erie, Pennsylvania, that this system was going before January 20th, and we're going to leave our local agency and our local volunteers high and dry. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
And my understanding is those conversations have been offered and had, and there's been no response. And that's why USCCB has filed this lawsuit now. They tried to have initiate a dialogue. Mm-hmm. We had a big conference call with USCCB on January 27th because the executive order came out on Saturday, which was just delightful for everyone's weekend. And then they always seem to do it Friday night or Saturday.
Right.
So Monday, there was a huge call of all of the USCCB affiliates. And, the strategy was diplomacy and reaching out and trying to establish some consensus and dialogue. And that was met with no response. So I know it does not make sense to the logical mind. And yet this is happening. So, you're asking me how can people help? People can contact me, and we would be happy to accept donations and recognize those donations as any donor would see fit.
Hold on a second. I don't want to go there just yet. This is a $300,000 nut that you're trying to crack, right?
That's just one bill. Yeah.
Okay.
There are other outstanding bills that we have that are related to the refugee program that are different funding sources. It gets a little complicated. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, we're a subcontractor for USCRI. That's a state program. They're not paying us either. And I don't understand that one because that's not where their money is coming from. My understanding is they have just stopped providing services. And I have spoken directly with the executive director of the local USCRI. She's been lovely to me.
Yeah.
She doesn't understand why no one is responding to me. And probably they owe us maybe $50,000 or $60,000 because that's going back to November.
Wow. The I don't want to leave on this because I want you to talk about the what your efforts at Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services and this refugee resettlement services. What has it meant to families that are making a go of it in the United States here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and that are truly a success story? Can you share an anecdote or two?
Yes, absolutely. So we have several persons that we have helped resettle in Erie. One has become a teacher for the Erie School District, a teacher for the Erie School District. Another one has become a teaching assistant at, I believe, a private school. Mm-hmm. We have folks that, I made notes on this. Let me just get this because this was hot off the press. So I think one of the misnomers is that these people are coming to us uneducated and illiterate. And that could not be farther from the case. So we have people with degrees in chemistry, computer science, laser engineering, English literature, which I find very interesting. Mm-hmm. One has become a medical assistant at Meds, came with a medical background. So many success stories. Our own staff, as I said before, 80% of them came into the country. They weren't clients of ours, but it's the same story. And they came, every single one of them. If you go on the website, you'll see their degrees and you'll see their accomplishments. And they are so just dedicated. I've never seen such a hard-working bunch of people that are just willing to go the extra mile, and yet there's this cloud over their head.
Yeah.
Some of them we had in 2016, they've already been through this once.
Wow. I and this is going to sound, curt or whatever, but I believe in it. I think people need to pray for.
We pray daily
for this situation and light a candle on behalf of our neighbors who are here under a total legal system, yet you're not able to fund the program.
Right. And if you look at it from a macro level and leave all of that out, we're not going to turn our back on these people and then have that become the city of Erie's problem.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Erie has a huge problem with homelessness. We're not going to turn our back on these folks and contribute to that problem.
A call to action, again, what would you have folks do?
Have them reach out to me if they have any questions. I can be reached out through the website, or my email is djoy@cccas.org. And we are actively seeking donations to be able to just sustain ourselves. We have an interesting story. Last week, I reached out to all of our vendors. And many of them we owe a lot of money to. So there's one particular furniture dealer in Erie, and I won't mention his name, that we buy all of our furniture for these apartments. And he said, Dawn, don't worry about it. We prepared for this. We're here to support you. Thank you for being transparent. Our website developer said the same thing. People could not be more supportive and nicer about this. But it's not a good feeling to be able to reach out to people and say, hey, we can't pay you and I don't know when.
Again, it's a contract that you had that you expected to be reimbursed on, and so that you can fulfill your contractual obligations. One last note here before I run out of time. People understand that these are legal refugees that have sought asylum through all the legal means that the United States has in the congressional record. This is the process that these men and women have taken.
And my understanding is you cannot seek legal asylum if you have a criminal record. And I know that's the other thing that people think sometimes of our folks, that they're criminals from another country and the other country is just trying to get rid of them to come here. Mm-hmm. You cannot seek legal asylum if you have some sort of background of that nature.
And there is no federal laws being usurped by this,
Absolutely
by
not.
your agency.
Absolutely not.
Right.
We wouldn't be getting them.
Yeah.
The vetting process is so very high level that that just wouldn't happen.
Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you.
I know it was a lot to
it.
get through, but I appreciate you sharing this story.
It's one of my favorite stories. It's a sad story at the end, but one of my favorite stories about all the good work that this agency does and will hopefully continue to do for another 71 years.
Dr. Dawn Joy, the Executive Director of Catholic Charities Counseling and Adoption Services. It's 4:57. Thank you.